There is a version of you that no one has met yet, not because it doesn't exist, but because you spent too much time trying to fit into places where you had to make yourself smaller to be accepted. You learned to silence your ideas, hide your dreams, and say that you didn't need anything. God didn't put abilities in you so that you would live permanently hiding them. Maybe that's why lately you feel a discomfort you can't explain. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you simply no longer fit into the life you once accepted. 2. The most dangerous thing about getting used to something bad is that eventually it stops seeming bad to you. You get used to stress, arguments, going to sleep worried, and waking up without excitement. You even start calling normal a life that you secretly want to live. And when someone asks you what's wrong, you answer, nothing, I'm used to it. But God can show you that surviving is not the same as living. There are things you tolerated for years because you didn't know another way to exist. And maybe the peace you're looking for begins the day you stop calling normal what is constantly destroying you inside. 3. Imagine that tomorrow, everyone's opinion about you disappeared. No one could judge your work, your appearance, your decisions, or your mistakes. What would you do differently? That question can reveal more about you than any test, because many of your decisions may not have come from what you wanted, but from what you feared others would think. God didn't call you to build a life to impress spectators. He called you to walk with purpose. And maybe you've spent too long trying to prove something to people who won't even be there when you finally arrive at your place you've been searching for so long. 4. You lost an opportunity, and for weeks you thought you had ruined your future. You went over every detail, looking for the exact moment when you made the mistake. But then something happened that you didn't expect. Another opportunity appeared, more difficult, and much closer to what you truly wanted. Then you understood that that loss hadn't destroyed your path. It had simply changed the direction. God doesn't need everything to go according to your plan to lead you toward His purpose. Sometimes a closed door seems like a tragedy until you discover what was behind the door you never got to walk through. 5. There are people who only knew you're wounded, vision, and now believe they know who you are. They remember you for your mistakes, for the time when you were lost, or for decisions you made when you still didn't know how to handle your life. But you know how much you've changed. You've learned things they never saw. You've cried battles no one knew about. You've asked for forgiveness, started over, and allowed God to transform parts of you that you didn't even recognize before. Some people need an old version of you to maintain their own opinion. But God is interested in the person you're becoming. 6. One night you realize something strange. You're no longer waiting for that person to come back. There was no final conversation. No perfect explanation appeared. And you never received the closure you imagined. One day, it simply stopped hurting in the same way. And then you understand that maybe closure doesn't always come from the other person. Sometimes it comes when God changes what that story means inside you. You no longer need an apology to move forward. And maybe the true sign that you've healed will be realizing that you no longer need someone to come back to feel that your story is complete. 7. You laugh about your own problems in front of others because it's easier to make a joke than to admit that something is affecting you. Everyone laughs with you, and for a few minutes it works. But when you're alone again, reality comes back. You've turned humor into armor, and maybe no one knows how much effort you make to make everything seem okay. God isn't confused by that mask. He knows your thoughts before you can explain them. You don't have to present yourself as strong before Him. Maybe the most powerful prayer you can make tonight isn't elegant or long. It could simply be, God, this is hurting me. 8. You realize that you're waiting for an apology to allow yourself to be happy. In your mind, there's a condition. When that person acknowledges what they did, I'll be able to move forward. But maybe you're giving someone who hurts you control over your future. They may never admit what they did. They may never understand how much it affected you. And even so, your life has to continue. God can give you justice without turning you into a prisoner of needing to see it with your own eyes. Sometimes freedom begins when you stop waiting for the person who broke you to be the one who has to repair you. 9. One day you do something you've been postponing for months and discover that it wasn't as impossible as your mind had made you believe. The real problem wasn't the difficulty. It was all the time you spent imagining failure before beginning. Fear had built an entire story about something you hadn't even tried. And maybe you do this with many areas of your life. You decide you can't before finding out, because some answers will never appear while you remain standing in front of the problem, waiting to feel ready. 10. One day you're going to look at the person you are now and understand why you couldn't stay where you were. You'll remember the nights when you thought God was far away, the doors that closed, the people who left, and the times when you understood absolutely nothing. But you'll also remember something else. Even when you could only take one small step, you took it. Not for you to understand the entire map, only for you to trust enough to keep walking. Because maybe the miracle you're waiting for won't be that God changes your past, but that one day you can look back and be grateful that He didn't let you stay there. There are decisions that seem small when you make them, but years later you discover that they changed your entire life. That no you said, that person you decided to meet, that day when you finally started something you had been postponing for months. You never knew what consequences it would have. And that is the strange thing about life. We almost never recognize an important moment while we are living it. So don't dismiss a small decision just because today it seems insignificant. Maybe you are standing in front of a door that you don't yet recognize as part of your story. 2. You became so used to solving everyone's problems that no one noticed that you needed help too. You are the one who listens, the one who gives advice, the one who shows up when someone needs you. But when it's your turn, you say that you can handle it. And little by little, you turn self-sufficiency into a prison. God didn't design you to carry absolutely everything alone. Asking for help does not diminish your strength. Recognizing your limits is also wisdom. Maybe you've spent too long trying to be strong for everyone, when what you really need is to allow someone else to be strong for you too. 3. There is a type of sadness that doesn't come after losing something, but after achieving it, you finally get what you fought so hard for and expected to feel an enormous happiness. But the days go by and you discover that you still feel the same emptiness. Then you start looking for another goal, another achievement, another thing to chase. God can give you success, opportunities, and abundance. But none of those things were created to take His place. Maybe the problem was never that you were missing something. Maybe you were trying to fill with things a space that had another purpose. Faru, one day you hear a song you hadn't heard in years, and without expecting it, you become the person you were when you first heard it. You remember a place, a person, a conversation, and a version of yourself that no longer exists. You realize that you've spent so much time trying to forget certain seasons that you forgot to appreciate what you learned from them. God doesn't waste difficult seasons. Even what broke you can become a part of your wisdom. You don't have to return to the past to honor it. You can be grateful for what it taught you and keep walking without carrying it with you. 5. One day you're going to receive exactly what you wanted and discover that it also brings a responsibility you never imagined. More money means more decisions. More influence means more people watching you. More opportunities mean more possibilities of making mistakes. That's why maybe some things are taking longer than you want. Not because God has forgotten your prayer, but because receiving something before you're ready can become a burden. Maybe you're asking God to speed up the answer, while He is slowly working on the person who will have to sustain it. 6. You promised yourself that this time you wouldn't go back. And then someone appeared, said exactly the words you needed to hear, and for a moment, you forgot everything it had cost you to walk away. But there is something you need to remember. Missing something doesn't mean you should get it back. Feeling nostalgic doesn't mean God wants to return you to that season. Sometimes the heart remembers the good moments and conveniently forgets why you had to leave. If God gave you the strength to walk away, don't confuse a temporary emotion with a sign to return. 7. There are days when you do everything right and things still go wrong. You do your part, you work, you pray, you try to keep a good attitude, and the result is still disappointing. Those days are dangerous because they can make you think that doing the right thing is useless. God sees decisions no one applauds, efforts no one recognizes, and battles no one knows you're fighting. Don't let a temporary result convince you that your effort has no meaning. Some seeds take so long to appear that, when they finally grow, you've already forgotten how long they had been underground. 8. Maybe the greatest change in your life won't begin with a great opportunity, but with a conversation you've been avoiding with yourself for too long. What do you really want? What are you tolerating out of fear? Who are you trying to impress? What dream did you abandon because someone said it was impossible? You can change cities, jobs, circles. You can end up carrying the same emptiness everywhere. God can change your surroundings, but He also wants to transform your insides. And maybe the new life you're looking for doesn't begin when you find a different place, but when you finally dare to be different. 9. One day someone will ask you how you managed to overcome that season, and you probably won't know what to answer because while you were living through it, you didn't feel like you were overcoming anything. You were just surviving. You got up, fulfilled your responsibilities, and tried to make it to the next day. You didn't see purpose, but you were learning endurance, patience, and dependence on God in places where no theory could have taught you. And when you look back, maybe you'll understand something you still can't see today. You weren't wasting time in that season. You were being prepared in secret. 10. There is a question you should perhaps ask yourself. Before asking God to change your situation, what part of me would have to change if He answered tomorrow? Because we all want the door to open, but few think about the responsibility behind it. We want a healthy relationship without learning to communicate. We want prosperity without discipline. We want purpose without sacrifice. We want influence without character. It may be training, and when what you've been asking for finally arrives, maybe the real surprise won't be what you receive, but who you will have become to receive it.